They eliminated my position on a Monday morning in front of 43 employees. No private meeting, no severance discussion, just a sentence delivered into open air by a man who had been with the company 11 weeks and already had a poster above the copier that said, "Compliance is not equal to complacency," in Comic Sans. What neither he nor the CEO understood was that my personnel file contained something no HR department had ever thought to separate from my name. 43 active federal licenses, one for every year of regulatory infrastructure I had quietly, methodically, deliberately built inside that company. And every single one of them was leaving with me. My name is anonymous, and this is what happens when you fire the license. Before we get to the collapse, there is one clause most compliance officers never think to negotiate into their contracts. I did. 8 years ago, quietly, on page 4 of my employment agreement, during a Tuesday afternoon signing session where the general counsel was more interested in his lunch order than the document in front of him. Section 7C. In the event of involuntary termination, all company-paid licensing responsibilities and regulatory certifications shall be considered void. All credentials will be formally rescinded within 48 hours of contract nullification. Nobody read it at signing. Nobody read it for 8 years. The efficiency consultant who ordered my termination certainly never read it. I know this because 3 days after he fired me, he sent a message to legal asking how to override a federal license expiry. He called the dashboard, the system I had designed and maintained for 7 years, the dashboard thingy. That word, thingy. I screenshot it, filed it under miscellaneous recipes, and slept like a woman who had already won. I had spent a decade building the regulatory backbone of a mid-sized biotech firm from nothing. 43 active federal licenses. Every vendor relationship, every client contract, every FDA filing, legally tethered to a single certified authority. Mine. The consultant arrived 11 weeks before my termination. Early 30s, MBA from somewhere with a good football team. The kind of professional who used the word synergy without irony and considered a reorganization chart a creative act. He called my work legacy overhead. He had a standing desk, a noise-canceling headset, and the quiet confidence of someone who had never personally filed a federal compliance renewal in his life. He meant legacy overhead as a diagnosis. I heard it as a description of exactly what I was. Legacy, as in foundational, as in load-bearing, as in remove it and the structure above it falls through the floor. He pulled my name off the organizational chart on a Tuesday. He left it on 43 federal documents because he didn't know it was there. That distinction would cost the company 8 figures.
For 6 weeks, the consultant systematically dismantled every system I had built, not because they were broken, but because they had my name on them, and his name wasn't anywhere near them. My compliance database, 7 years of architecture, handed to a junior analyst who asked me, with genuine curiosity, whether FDA stood for Food Design Aesthetic. My licensing dashboard reassigned to an intern who had just learned what a PDF was. My admin access revoked on a Thursday afternoon with no documentation and no conversation. Just a red error screen and a message that said, "Contact your system administrator." I was the system administrator. I didn't argue. I just nodded, walked to a terminal down the hall, and revoked their access from the shadow admin panel I'd never told anyone about. If I was getting removed from the ship, I wasn't leaving the map behind. The day the consultant announced my termination, publicly, standing behind my chair in the open floor plan, using the phrase "forward momentum" twice in one sentence, I stood up slowly, straightened my jacket, and walked to HR. I signed the termination paperwork in a single stroke. Then I asked for a printed copy. HR hesitated. The consultant blinked.
I waited. 4 minutes later, I walked out of that building with a paper copy, a stapled receipt, and the precise, unhurried calm of someone who had been planning for this exact moment for 8 years. Section 7C was no longer a clause. It was a countdown. At 7:13 p.m. that evening, my phone displayed a confirmation from the Federal Compliance Registry. Licensing authority for certificates CN8835 through FD2210 has been formally relinquished. Entities dependent on these licenses will be marked non-compliant within 24 hours unless reauthorized by a certified replacement. 43 licenses, simultaneously orphaned. I read it once, set the phone face down on the kitchen counter. Then I made dinner. Pasta. Nothing fancy. The kind of meal you make when you have nowhere to be and nothing left to prove. Somewhere across the city, 43 automated federal systems had just sent the same notification to a company that no longer had a single person qualified to respond to any of them. The consultant was probably still at his standing desk, optimizing something. I did the dishes. I went to bed at 10:30. I slept without interruption for the first time in 6 weeks. Wednesday began quietly. At 9:04 a.m., procurement attempted to confirm shipment of medical-grade filtration components for a biotech client. The vendor's automated response arrived in under 3 minutes. Cannot fulfill shipment. Receiving entity listed as inactive. License CN8835 expired. Contact listed certifying officer. I was the listed certifying officer. At 9:17 a.m., the internal licensing dashboard, once maintained with the precision of a surgical instrument, began generating cascade alerts. Inactive flags, orphaned credentials, red indicators across every active vertical. A junior compliance analyst named Renee, decent person, 2 years out of university, genuinely trying, attempted to explain the situation to the consultant. "Sir, contact updates require certification reauthorization." She was the only credentialed officer with reauthorization authority across all active verticals. No one else is registered with the Federal Compliance Board. The consultant said, "So just do it anyway." There it was. The sentence that proved he had never once read the documents he had spent 6 weeks dismantling. Renee, barely old enough to rent a car, replied with the flattest, most devastating sentence of her career. "Sir, the re-registration period takes 4 to 6 weeks. There is no override." Silence. The fatal kind. By 10 a.m., API calls to the FDA audit portal were returning a single rejection code. Invalid license holder. 5 major client relationships, representing the majority of active revenue, were formally suspended pending reauthorization. The consultant sent a message to legal. "Anyone know how to override a license expiry tag in the dashboard thingy?" Thingy. Meanwhile, I was at home in sweatpants reading the entire thread from an anonymous email chain a former colleague had quietly blind copied me into. I poured myself a coffee. Colombian black. Added nothing. Some mornings require absolutely nothing added.
The CEO returned from an overseas trip that Monday with a cruise tan, a silk shirt still creased from whatever resort he had just floated back from, and the complete oblivion of a man who had not checked his email in 11 days. He walked through his own building throwing finger guns at junior associates. By the time he reached the executive floor, he had 3 urgent compliance emails, 1 voicemail from legal that ended with the words "non-compliance disaster," and a room full of red-eyed managers waiting for him in silence. He walked in expecting turbulence. He walked into a plane crash. Operations frozen, vendor shipments halted, federal inspections failed, client contracts suspended, revenue dashboard flatlined. The consultant standing in the center of it all, the efficiency fixer, the forward momentum architect,
looking considerably less efficient than his 11-week track record had suggested. The CEO pulled up my termination paperwork on the wall monitor, read it, scrolled, read it again. His voice didn't rise. It dropped. "You fired the license holder." The consultant opened his mouth. The CEO didn't wait. Her name is on every regulatory document, every active license, every renewal path, every legal compliance chain this company depends on to exist. He placed a single document on the table. Top 5 suspended vendors, all contracts frozen. Listed certifying officer on every single one. My name. Then he turned to the consultant with the specific expression of a man who has just understood the full scope of an irreversible mistake. "You let someone who writes in buzzword soup fire the one person this company legally cannot operate without." The consultant had no answer. For the first time in 11 weeks, no slide deck, no framework, no pivot. Just silence and a standing desk he would never use again. What the consultant failed to understand, what every person who mistakes institutional knowledge for institutional inertia fails to understand, is this. Compliance architecture is not a set of tasks. It is a set of legal relationships between named individuals and federal governing bodies. You can eliminate a position from an org chart. You cannot eliminate a certification from a federal registry. You can revoke access to a dashboard. You cannot revoke the name printed on 43 active federal licenses. You can call someone's work legacy overhead and mean it as a dismissal. But legacy, in legal terms, means binding, precedent, enforceable. He removed me from the organizational chart without understanding that the organizational chart was decorative. The Federal Compliance Registry was structural. He optimized the decoration. He never touched the structure. Because he didn't know the structure existed. Because he never read the documents. Because the documents had my name on them and he assumed that was administrative. It was constitutional. The compliance trap doesn't care about your title. It doesn't care about your standing desk or your reorganization framework. It only cares whose name is on the document. Mine was, until I chose to remove it.
The CEO's office sent a formal return offer within 48 hours. Consulting role, immediate start. Compensation described as generous. A full discretion clause, no public commentary, no regulatory statements, no interviews. The offer was 4 paragraphs long, professionally written, carefully structured. Not one word of apology in any of them. I read it at my kitchen table with a second coffee. Took exactly 4 minutes. Then I opened a reply and typed without stopping. I appreciate the offer. Unfortunately, I don't return to structures I've watched collapse under the weight of their own decisions. Please find attached a highlighted copy of Section 7C, formal confirmation of license revocation from the National Registry Board, a screenshot of your certification dashboard taken 72 hours post-termination. You'll notice my name still listed, grayed out, irreplaceable. Wishing you compliance and clarity. No threats, no demands, no negotiation, just receipts. I clicked send, closed the laptop. Not like a woman closing a chapter, like someone closing a door they built, installed, and locked from the outside. 3 weeks later, I accepted a director position at a competing firm. My first act was securing 2 client contracts my former employer had publicly referenced as cornerstone relationships in their last earnings call. Those clients cited one deciding factor: continuous compliance confidence. My former employer's dashboard never returned to green. Legal fines accumulated weekly. The consultant's title was revised twice in 30 days before disappearing from the company directory entirely. The office holiday party was canceled. The standing desk was reassigned to someone who needed it. And above my desk in the new office, pinned to the monitor with a single blue push pin, was a yellow sticky note. No signature, no date.
5 words, written in steady block letters, in case they ever forget. I was the license. In corporate infrastructure, the most dangerous person in the building is never the one with the largest title or the newest framework. It's the one whose name is printed on the documents that keep the building standing. They forgot to read the documents. One last thing. The consultant thought compliance was a department. He'd never met the CFO's assistant. This is Executive Reckoning. The office finally hits back.